Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on a mission that I think is, well, it's maybe one of the most crucial we've ever done.
I agree. We're looking at a section from Rishi Khullar's manuscript, From Suffering to Surfing.
Specifically, the application part. And it really is about a profound personal paradigm shift.
It absolutely is.
Mhm.
Khullar's work, it really puts his finger on one of the most crippling anxieties of modern life.
Which is,
It's this deep-seated belief that your life is either, a complex puzzle you have to solve perfectly,
or worse.
or worse, a machine that you have to constantly optimize for peak efficiency.
And that mindset is just everywhere. The idea that if we can just find the perfect routine or the perfect job or the perfect metric,
Then everything will just click into place and run smoothly.
but it never does it? I mean, what happens when life, which is always messy and chaotic and just not linear, throws a giant unexpected variable into your perfect little machine?
You don't just fail.
Yeah.
You feel fundamentally broken. You feel this immense anxiety and guilt because you confuse the inevitable chaos of the world with some kind of personal failing.
And that's the trap.
It is. And what's so fascinating here is the replacement philosophy. The manuscript argues life isn't a rigid machine. It's not a straight line to one destination.
So what is it?
It's a complex, adaptive system. Think of it like a vast, moving ocean.
Okay, I like that.
And so the core skill you need to navigate it isn't control.
Yeah.
It's coordination, it's flow, it's constant adjustment.
So we're not factory engineers. We're learning to be expert navigators,
Yeah.
dancers almost.
Exactly. And that shift is so liberating.
So over the next half hour or so, we're going to distill the really critical, actionable steps in this framework for you.
We're going to dive into why tracking your time is pretty much meaningless if you're not tracking your energy.
And we'll get into why the whole pursuit of a single fixed purpose is actually kind of damaging.
And how to stop relying on things like motivation and willpower, which are just fundamentally unreliable, and start building systems that make success almost inevitable.
Our goal here is to help you shift your internal experience, to move away from that feeling of chronic exhaustion and anxiety,
That feeling of constantly fighting the machine.
and toward a feeling of adaptive, coordinated movement, learning to surf the current of your own life.
So let's unpack that.
Okay, let's start right there with that core metaphor that really drives everything else, surfing the system.
Mm-hmm.
In our culture, this hyper-capitalist, productivity-obsessed culture, we are so conditioned to see every single challenge through this lens of optimization, maximum output.
And that leads directly to what the source calls the machine model failure.
Okay.
If you treat your career or your health or your relationships as just a set of inputs that should produce predictable outputs,
Like a perfect supply chain.
you're just constantly running up against reality.
Yeah.
Constantly. You try to optimize your job, your morning routine, your diet, and the second there's an illness or a market shift or, a relationship problem,
The whole system just breaks.
the whole thing breaks.
Yeah.
And the psychological cost of that is huge.
It's not just that the plan failed, it's the sense of personal failure that comes with it.
Exactly. If you believe life is a straight, perfectly paved road, then every little detour
Every unexpected pothole.
makes you feel like you're defective
Yeah.
or you're lagging behind some imaginary schedule that you think everyone else is on.
Right. It's that comparison trap.
The machine model demands rigidity. And rigidity in a fluid world always results in stress, which is why the surfing model is such a powerful counter-narrative.
Okay, so a professional surfer, they know they have absolutely zero control over the waves.
Or the tide or the wind. Zero. They have to work with the immense energy of the ocean, not against it.
And the manuscript breaks this adaptive mindset down into three really concrete, transferable steps. The first one is non-negotiable.
You have to read the conditions.
They're constantly asking, what's changing right now? Where is the energy moving? It's not about a plan you made last year. It's about real-time, high-fidelity data.
In a professional sense, this means you're actively monitoring team morale or new tech shifts or what the market is pulling for.
Mm-hmm.
It's recognizing that the big wave isn't coming from your perfectly drafted 5-year plan. It's emerging from an unexpected client need or a new AI tool.
So you spend less time planning what you want to happen.
And more time observing what is happening.
Okay, so that's step one. Read the conditions. What's step two?
They position themselves. And this is where the wisdom of restraint comes in.
So it's not about frantic paddling.
Not at all.
Yeah.
A novice tries to paddle for every single wave,
Mm-hmm.
and they get exhausted.
The expert waits.
The expert waits for the right wave, It's about selective engagement,
Hmm.
choosing the best spot to catch the current, not just applying maximum effort all the time.
This translates directly to our professional lives, doesn't it? It's about learning to say no.
It is. Positioning yourself means saying no to that mediocre project that drains 30% of your time so that you're fully available mentally and energetically when that 70% opportunity that really aligns with your direction finally shows up.
Okay, and then the final step, they ride dynamically.
Right. Once they catch the wave, it's not a straight line to the shore. It's constant balance, constant adjustment. It's flow.
You're moving with the water,
Right.
shifting your weight, letting the environment dictate the immediate path.
Not your pre-planned trajectory.
Yeah.
The core insight, like we said, is coordination, not control. You're learning to dance with a system that's always in motion.
This just instantly reframes something like career pivots.
Oh, completely. The traditional mindset is the career ladder.
Right.
Get the degree, get the entry-level job, get the promotion. Step 1, step 2, step 3.
It's so linear, so fixed.
But the people who seem truly fulfilled, the ones who seem to just effortlessly capture opportunities, the surfers, they treat careers like emergent waves.
They're masters of pattern spotting.
Yes. They're always tuned in. What am I doing when I lose track of time? What tasks are generating surprising positive feedback from others?
They're reading the conditions of their own life.
And they use their strength to position themselves for the next systemic shift. For example, maybe they notice their company's having massive scaling issues. Their own strength is solving complex, broken systems.
So instead of just waiting for the next promotion in their marketing role,
They shift. They move from being a marketing manager to leading a new cross-functional team on product operations or system integration. They move to where the systemic pressure and energy is building.
not just following the preset track for their old role.
Exactly. It's movement based on feedback and emergent energy. They stop obsessing over some perfect job and start tuning into their own energy map and the currents of the organization.
The practical takeaway here seems to be what the source calls low-stakes surfing.
Yes. Test a new project. Connect with people in a totally different industry. Take a small lateral move just to gather data.
So you don't wait for clarity before you move.
You gather clarity by moving, and that, ironically, makes life much more livable, even when it's chaotic.
And look, if we're going to accept that the system is complex and we need flow over fixed plans, then we have to talk about the one concept that puts the most pressure on people.
Purpose.
Yes, Khullar dedicates a lot of time to this, explaining why purpose is the wrong word.
It's such a brilliant critique of the whole self-help industrial complex.
Because that word purpose, it just carries so much psychological baggage, doesn't it?
Immense. It suggests there's this single, divine, perfectly formed answer that exists outside of you just waiting to be found.
And you haven't found it by 30 or 40 or 50?
You feel anxious, you feel behind schedule, you feel like you failed some kind of cosmic mandate.
The source reframes this so beautifully.
It does. It says, purpose is not a noun, it's a verb. It's not something you find ready-made. It's something that is formed, not found.
It emerges through action.
And feedback and connection to other people. It's an effective aligned movement, not the cause of it.
So if it emerges, what are the conditions that allow it to emerge? The manuscript says it comes from checking 3 specific boxes.
The 3 boxes of usefulness.
Right. What are they?
The first one is simple, usefulness. The activity has to genuinely help someone else, solve a real problem, bring value into the world.
So if your work only serves your ego or your bank account, the satisfaction is just hollow.
It's temporary. The second box is energy. This is your internal indicator. When you're doing this thing, do you lose track of time? Do you enter a flow state?
It's intrinsically rewarding. You're not just trading your energy for a paycheck.
You're actually generating energy through the process itself.
Okay, so usefulness, energy, and the third.
Demand.
Yeah.
This one often validates the other 2.
Yeah.
Other people keep asking you to do more of it,
Not because they're being demanding.
but because the service you're providing is valuable and it's scarce. When all 3 of those things intersect, it helps people, it energizes you, and people want more of it. That's the sustainable core of purpose.
That intersection is the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it completely flips the standard approach on its head. So instead of that big, scary existential question, what's my grand purpose?
Mm-hmm.
The practical question becomes, where am I currently being pulled into service in ways that energize me?
I love that. Where am I being pulled?
Consider the example of the accidental mentor from the manuscript.
Okay.
A senior executive, let's call him Mark, gets approached by a younger colleague for some career advice. Now, Mark hates formal networking, But he genuinely loves talking about strategy and unlocking potential.
So he takes the meeting.
He spends an hour with his colleague and realizes he completely lost track of time. The colleague gets great advice, succeeds in their pivot, and
Then refers to more people.
exactly, saying, Mark is the best strategic sounding board I know.
So Mark never sat down and decided, my purpose is to be a mentor.
Never. He just noticed a pattern. He was being useful, it gave him energy, and there was demand. His purpose as a guide was formed through organic action and positive feedback.
Not by writing a mission statement on a mountaintop. So purpose, then, is just a byproduct of being useful in a way that aligns with your internal energy. You don't need to define your whole life's mission.
You just need to notice the direction life keeps nudging you.
Which brings us to a potential challenge, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that if we can't control the system and our purpose just sort of emerges, how do we guide ourselves? If we throw out the map, aren't we just at risk of wandering forever?
It's the natural and necessary pushback. And that's where Chapter 75 comes in. Direction over plan. Or, as the source puts it, a compass beats a map.
A compass beats a map. I like that.
Because the machine model relies on what the source calls the failure of fixed plans. A blueprint assumes a stable world.
But the world is never stable.
Never. So if your plan is a rigid set of steps, step 1, get X, step 2, marry Y, step 3, retire at Z, it requires the market, your health, your partner, everything to remain static.
Yeah.
And when change inevitably hits,
The plan shatters.
and the psychological mechanism there is rigidity. You get so fixated on sticking to the blueprint that you start ignoring powerful new information about what's actually happening.
And you end up mourning the plan you lost instead of adapting to the reality you have.
Which is why we need the power of direction. Instead of a detailed fixed map, you defined a North Star.
And critically, this North Star should be a word or a core feeling, not a rigid outcome.
Exactly. Words like vitality, autonomy, connection, contribution, that word becomes your absolute compass bearing.
So let's say your North Star is autonomy. A potential job offer comes in. You don't evaluate it based on salary or title.
Those are metrics from the old machine system.
Instead, you ask a micro question at every fork in the road. Does this job, this relationship, this habit get me closer to my direction of autonomy?
And that is the genius of adaptive navigation. It allows for massive course corrections. If you set a fixed goal and the world shifts, you failed. But if you set a direction and the world shifts, you just shift. You adjust the sail. The ability to pivot quickly is celebrated as a skill, not a failure.
You could take a 90-degree turn in your career if the new path clearly leads toward your direction, even if it looks nothing like your old plan.
It validates the messy, iterative nature of real life. The people who are truly fulfilled aren't the perfect planners.
They're the expert navigators.
They're the ones who understand that life doesn't reward perfect planning. It rewards the ability to read the water and adjust the sail.
Okay, so if we're going to surf the system and use a compass for direction, then we absolutely need an internal dashboard that tells us what's actually going on, not one based on vanity metrics.
And this brings us to Chapter 3, which introduces a really powerful, non-obvious insight. The energy audit. The idea that energy is greater than time.
Energy over time.
Yeah. We are conditioned to treat time as the ultimate resource because it's linear, it's measurable, it's fixed. We're always trying to squeeze more into our 24 hours.
But the source points out this fundamental flaw. Time is linear, but our energy is.
It's lumpy.
It is so lumpy. An exhausted, distracted hour where you accomplish half a task is not the same thing as a focused flow state hour where you complete 3.
Not even close. You don't run out of time, you run out of usable energy.
And the wiser people, the ones operating under the surfing model, they schedule their days around their energy curve, not just by the clock.
Right. They know when they are mentally sharp for deep work and when they're depleted and should just do admin tasks.
So this means we have to start treating energy as data?
Yes. We have these physical, emotional, and cognitive rhythms every single day, but we treat them like background noise and just try to power through with more coffee or willpower.
So the energy audit makes this intentional.
It requires intentional, high-fidelity tracking. The framework is incredibly practical. For 7 days, you track your activities in 2-hour blocks with 3 simple labels: energized, drained, or neutral.
But the key isn't just the label.
No, the key is capturing the triggers. You have to note what you were doing, who you were with, the time of day, and the environment. Were you in a noisy office, alone at home, outdoors?
Because that reveals the unseen debt or interest being accrued all day.
Exactly. A task might seem neutral on paper, like reviewing a document. But if you're doing it while also fielding Slack messages in a cold, loud office, the context makes it drained.
So you realize the task itself isn't the problem.
The context is the problem.
Okay, so once you have a week of this data, you create an energy balance sheet, a clear list of your top 3 recharge activities versus your top 3 drainers.
And this moves you immediately to the final critical step, which is design.
This is where the change happens.
It is. You make your top 3 energizers non-negotiable appointments in your calendar, treating them with the same respect as a client meeting.
So that might mean blocking out 2 hours every Tuesday morning for solo deep work.
Or scheduling a walk and talk with a colleague who you know gives you relational energy. And on the flip side, you have to build boundaries around, delegate, or just actively quit your top 3 drainers.
The real-life example of this in the manuscript is so good. The communications manager who insisted she hated her entire job.
I remember this one.
After her audit, she realized she only felt drained when she was writing long, asynchronous strategy documents or sitting in internal budget meetings.
But she was profoundly energized during live, client-facing calls where she could react and synthesize and build rapport.
So she didn't need to quit the company.
She just needed a new energy alignment. She shifted her role to focus almost entirely on high-stakes live client engagement, and she found a colleague who loved the solitary, detailed work of strategy docs to swap responsibilities with.
And her satisfaction just soared.
Because she changed the structure of her labor to align with her energy curve without ever changing her company or title. That's the power of the audit.
And, what often prevents us from even doing that audit or acting on it is that we're just relentlessly focused on tracking the wrong things entirely.
Oh, this is a big one. Chapter 5. The wrong metrics are ruining your life.
It's a devastating critique of modern work culture, really.
It is. I mean, humans are optimizing machines. We will become highly efficient at whatever it is we choose to measure.
So if you track the wrong metrics,
You become hyper-efficient at living a life that fundamentally exhausts you, no matter how successful you look on the outside.
the list of common misaligned metrics in the source is just painfully familiar.
It is. Tracking salary instead of fulfillment.
Status instead of serenity.
Raw output instead of energy returns.
Attention received instead of meaningful connection made.
And just relentless growth instead of alignment and sustainability.
And this goes deep because the source says that metrics equal identity templates.
Right. What you choose to measure becomes what you value, and what you value fundamentally shapes who you are.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Khullar points out that if your primary metric is how quickly you respond to your inbox, your identity becomes someone who is always available.
Mm-hmm.
If you obsessively track your caloric intake and macros, your identity becomes a body to be continuously optimized and judged.
So we're actively shaping and reinforcing these negative identities just by the dashboards we choose to look at.
We are. The classic example is the productivity spiral. A listener, let's call her Sarah, tied her entire self-worth to a time-blocking app that measured every 15-minute block.
So she was incredibly productive, but
Constantly stressed. If a planned task took 16 minutes, or if her kid got sick and derailed the schedule, she didn't just feel like the plan failed, she felt like she had failed.
the solution wasn't a better app.
The solution was deleting the app and changing the core metric. She switched to a handwritten journal where she tracked 2 new things: moments of joy and presence, and her net energy level.
What happened?
Her raw output dropped a little at first, but her anxiety just plummeted. And her sustainable contribution went way up because she was now measuring alignment, not just volume.
So the practical audit here is essential.
You have to identify your 3 most tracked metrics right now and ask, what does this metric silently reward? Does it reward fast over deep, visible output over meaningful impact?
And then choose a new metric to track for a week. The one I love from the sources. Did I feel proud of how I spent my attention today?
Or did I feel deeply connected to someone I care about? Resetting the dashboard changes the whole game.
And speaking of internal metrics, this brings us to burnout. We have to understand the difference between just being tired and being existentially depleted.
Yes. Chapters 6 and 59 are just unambiguous about this. Burnout isn't about overwork, it's misalignment.
This is a myth we really have to debunk. The idea that burnout is purely about volume.
It's not. You can work 80 hours a week on a passion project that aligns with your values and feel energized.
And you can work 35 hours in a toxic, meaningless environment and feel completely dead inside.
Burnout is not about the hours you clock. It's about misalignment and emotional undernourishment.
The core causes listed are so revealing because they're existential. They're not just logistical.
Right. Things like the meaninglessness of the work, a chronic lack of clarity on whether you're making progress, a deep misalignment with your personal
The
values,
feeling of powerlessness.
and profound disconnection from your peers or from the purpose of the work.
And when those things are absent, the result is what the source calls emotional starvation.
And the symptoms are really distinct from just physical fatigue. They include a deep sense of futility, like, why am I even doing this?
Emotional numbness, the inability to care about successes or failures.
A kind of depletion that 8 hours of sleep just won't fix. And just a generalized cynicism or bitterness.
You don't need a vacation to recover from this.
No, you need to matter again.
The example of the disconnected engineer is so powerful here.
It is. He initially worked at a big tech firm, clocking maybe 40-hour weeks. He was well paid, but miserable. He felt like a tiny cog in a giant machine where his contribution was basically invisible,
So he jumped to a mission-driven startup.
where he often worked 60 to 70 hours a week. But he never burned out there. And the question is why?
Because at the startup, his voice mattered. He had agency in the design process.
He saw the immediate user benefit of his code, which gave him meaning. And he received constant energy and relational nutrients from his co-founders and his team.
So even though the volume was much higher,
The emotional return on his labor was positive. The work was demanding, but it was aligned.
so restoring meaning requires real structural change.
You have to inject clarity and agency. You have to ask, what can I realistically change in this environment? Define success not as make the quarter numbers, but as deliver a product that solves X problem for Y user.
You need to add relational nutrients.
Yes. Schedule co-working sessions, formal debriefs, shared celebrations. And fundamentally, you have to reconnect with the why. Who benefits if I succeed? What breaks if I stop?
Burnout is a signal.
It's a signal that your system is starved for emotional and intellectual sustenance.
So as we coordinate with the external system and audit our internal state, we have to confront the hidden engine that's driving our careers and our biggest breakdowns.
Our identity.
Yes. Chapter 7 and 40 reveal something I'd never really thought of this way. The best career moves are identity moves.
We often assume a new job is just a new set of tasks. But Khullar says, no, there's this invisible layer. It's a story pivot.
You're moving from the identity of a doer to a leader.
Or from obedient team member to sovereign expert. And the source notes that failure in new roles rarely comes from a lack of technical skill. It comes from dragging the old identity into the new structure.
This is why promotions trigger identity crises.
Exactly. The promotion can feel like an existential threat because it requires you to stop doing the very thing you were just rewarded for.
If you were promoted for being a brilliant analyst, the new job demands you become a brilliant coach and strategist.
And if you cling to that analyst identity, you were emotionally blocked from delegating, from coaching, from leading.
The classic example of this is the micromanaging manager.
Oh, this one is so relatable. She was a brilliant data analyst, highly rewarded for her meticulous, fast, flawless work. She gets promoted to lead a team,
And she continues to rewrite her team's reports until 10 p.m. every night.
convinced she's the only one smart enough to get it right. Her team resents her. She's perpetually exhausted. Why? Because her core identity is still, I am valuable because I am the smartest individual contributor.
She only succeeded when an executive gave her some really tough feedback.
Your job description is no longer about accuracy. It's about exponential growth through others.
Wow.
She had to consciously shed the identity of smartest person in the room and adopt the new identity of the architect of others' success.
So how do you do that consciously? The source offers a tool.
The identity shift map. You map your current identity. What makes you feel competent and safe right now? Then you name the new identity. What must you embody? The architect, the navigator, the coach.
And then, crucially, you build transitional rituals.
These rituals bridge the gap. For the micromanaging manager, it meant changing her wardrobe to feel more authoritative and less in the trenches.
It meant starting every meeting by asking her newest team member for their opinion first, which forced her to listen.
And she physically moved her desk to be less accessible for constant check-ins. It forced the new identity to become real. The insight is that careers are just the external scaffolding. The real project is the ongoing evolution of your internal identity.
But what happens when life forcefully collapses that scaffolding?
Chapter 9 reminds us that breakdowns are invitations, not interruptions.
They feel like disasters: a sudden job loss, a divorce, a major health scare.
But they often carry the clearest instructions for deep change.
We're so programmed to see crises as these detours that we have to quickly fix or bounce back from.
But the source frames them as necessary moments that stop the machinery, forcing us into deep internal listening. A crisis equals breaking the illusion. It rips away the comfortable lies you tell yourself.
In normal life, we maintain that psychological buffer. I'm fine, I'm happy, I'll deal with that toxic relationship later.
A breakdown removes the buffer. It forces you to see the fake identity, the hollow pursuit, or the toxic environment you've been ignoring. Sometimes we need the outside structure to collapse to find the internal truth.
The career freefall example is a great illustration of this. A successful corporate strategist gets laid off during a restructuring.
And losing her job wasn't just losing income. It shattered the professional mask she wore every day.
And in that subsequent panic and forced downtime, she finally admitted to herself that she hated strategy and had always wanted to write.
The crisis, because it removed her ability to lie to herself about her external identity, gave her the emotional permission to finally write for herself, which eventually led to a best-selling book.
So instead of trying to bounce back immediately, the process for using a breakdown as a blueprint involves radical observation.
You don't fix. You observe the ruins. What exactly cracked? Why did it crack? What truth were you desperately avoiding? The key is to create a ritual of renewal, not rebuilding the unstable structure you just left.
But building forward based on the truth that's been exposed.
And confronting that truth is central to Chapter 17, which addresses what the source calls the most expensive addiction.
Avoidance is the most expensive addiction.
And we're not talking about substance abuse here. We're talking about the low-stakes, chronic deferral of hard conversations, difficult decisions, or uncomfortable financial reviews.
We delay these things because we think we're protecting our present comfort or avoiding potential drama.
But in reality, we are accruing massive psychological interest on anxiety. This debt gets paid later in stress, fatigue, decision fatigue, and missed opportunities. Avoidance is the engine of mental load.
The real-life example here is so relatable. The founder who knew his co-founder was creating a toxic environment but delayed confronting him for 8 months to avoid drama.
And the true cost wasn't the one hard conversation he was afraid of.
No, it was the loss of a key technical employee who quit because of the toxicity, the erosion of internal trust, and 8 straight months of continuous low-level mental load that crippled his sleep and focus.
The debt incurred by avoidance is always greater than the cost of the confrontation.
So what are the practical moves to tackle this inertia?
The source offers 3. First, the 72-hour rule. If you are avoiding a hard conversation or a difficult email for more than 3 days, you have to schedule it, draft the opening line, and commit to the action within 72 hours.
Because action creates clarity.
And waiting just magnifies fear. Second, name the real fear. Don't just say, "I'm afraid of the conversation." Dig deeper.
I'm afraid I'll look incompetent.
Or, "I'm afraid they will hate me and I'll ruin the relationship." When you write down the worst-case scenario, you often realize it's manageable. Or sometimes you realize it's already happening in silent, painful ways.
And the third one?
Micro-expose yourself. This trains the capacity muscle. If you're avoiding checking a difficult lab report, just open the file. If you're avoiding a difficult client, send a tiny 2-sentence email just checking in.
It's like a psychological rep that lowers the activation energy for the full confrontation later.
And finally, let's tie this entire framework together. The surfing, the energy alignment, the identity work with the most powerful realization for sustained change.
This is in chapters 58 and 71, Design Beats Discipline, the Power of Defaults.
Yes. If your entire strategy for change requires you to rely on sheer willpower, the source warns you have already lost.
That is a hard truth.
It is. Motivation is a fleeting sugar high. Systems are your metabolism. Willpower is a draining battery that works best in emergencies, not for sustained day-to-day behavioral change.
Success doesn't come from high motivation.
It comes from engineering structures where doing the right thing is easier and more automatic than doing the wrong thing.
We have to acknowledge the default trap.
Right. Your life is currently running on a complex series of defaults. What happens when you're tired, stressed, hungry, or distracted?
And for most people, that default is passive. Doom scrolling, reacting instantly to email pings, eating junk food.
And thinking, "I'll start that important project tomorrow." These defaults are the silent, powerful architects of mediocrity.
So the solution is to actively engineer your defaults.
You have to shift the environment so that good behavior is frictionless. If you want to exercise, lay out your clothes the night before, pre-fill your water bottle, Put your shoes right by the door. You eliminate the micro decisions.
You also need to tie the new behavior to a strong existing trigger. After I finish my morning coffee, I journal for 10 minutes.
You're bypassing that whole internal negotiation process.
And crucially, you need to pre-commit for bad days.
Yes, you have to design defaults for your low-energy, exhausted, stressed-out self, because that is the self that actually makes 90% of the choices that determine your long-term success.
So you automate success. Block distracting apps during your deep work hours. Automate your savings transfers.
And make failure inconvenient. Keep all the junk food out of the house so you'd have to drive 30 minutes to get it.
The ultimate insight here is that the goal is to engineer inevitability.
It is. When the default path, the path of least resistance, is progress, you stop needing permission. And you stop relying on that elusive motivation that rarely shows up when you actually need it.
Wow. What an incredible journey through Khullar's framework. We've fundamentally challenged the whole machine model of life.
Mm-hmm. Shifting our perspective from rigid control to adaptive flow.
We've learned to audit the only true internal currency, our energy, instead of just managing time.
And we've reframed that paralyzing quest for purpose into the active, evolving practice of usefulness in motion.
And I think most powerfully, we've learned that sustainable, meaningful change doesn't rely on the draining force of discipline,
but on the liberating power of designing better defaults for our tired selves.
The ultimate message woven through this, especially in the closing chapters, seems to be that the system, the ocean of life, it isn't inherently hostile.
It just pulls and shifts constantly. The point isn't to escape the system, which is impossible. It's to understand its currents, work with them, and build a more resilient, better aligned system inside and around you.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought the manuscript leaves for you, the listener.
Khullar reminds us that you currently possess more structural freedom, more access, more options, more tools than almost any human being who has ever existed in history.
But here's the warning.
If you don't actively use that freedom, you will quickly lose it. It will be leased out to your habits, to algorithms designed to capture your attention, and to the psychological noise of comparison.
So the question that matters most today is a simple one. How will you intentionally use your freedom today to act on something that truly matters to your vitality and your direction, instead of spending that energy optimizing something that doesn't?
Will you finally build that essential boundary around one of your top energy drainers? Will you initiate that hard conversation you've been avoiding and shrink your anxiety debt?
Or will you simply schedule something joyful and non-monetized, a ritual of presence and flow, just to reclaim your internal resources?
Choose the action that creates the most truth.
Thank you for diving deep into this source material with us.
Until next time, keep surfing.